Okay, this is zone 2. As you see from this head right here, that one, this is set to a pretty good mist. It has pretty even application throughout, and that is the kind of setting that you normally want to be able to give an even distribution of water throughout its radius. In zone 1, especially in the corner over here, part of the problem that people tend to have when they seem to be doing all the things right but still have an in-ground irrigation system is having irrigation that's set to too much of a stream. Having, say, 90% of the water streamed out to cover about 20% of the area, rather than these, which have most of the water evenly distributed throughout most of its radius. This head over here is a good example of it. It's just a stream. You have redundant patterns, but they're shooting over one another and leaving gaps in between that aren't really being covered. And those gapped areas, those drier areas relative to the wetter areas around it, tend to be the real problem for mole infestation. As you go around, what I'd suggest is that you turn on your irrigation system, look at the irrigation, and you'll see that, like here, this head, most of its water is just going here, and there's no redundancy on the other side of it to cover the areas by the head, and so by that head is probably going to be susceptible to infestation later on without this treatment. With this treatment it can help, but the real key thing to do is to learn what it is that's luring moles in the first place, and in tandem with our treatment help your approach help your cause rather than hinder it. Okay, this head is another example of improperly set. If you run it, you'll see that it is set to mostly a stream, and the redundant patterns that you're seeing are arcing over, say, that area, which is going to remain most dry. This one is hitting, you may not be able to see it, but right about here, and that one is hitting right about here, leaving this underserved. This area is not only going to be dead grass, but it's also going to be a prime area for moles. The best thing to do is to tune this down so that you get an even application throughout its radius and not rely on redundancy. There are video tutorials on how to do this. Just see page 4 of our website under best practices. Once again, you can see that these are all set to stream. These are things that you are absolutely going to want to adjust. I would suggest probably not calling your irrigation guy out here to do this, because he thinks this is a good job. The heads that are on your property, pretty much all of them except the ones that were in zone 2 that I showed you were set to mist, need adjusting. This can be done by you. You can either take a, depending on the head, right here, you can put either a Allen wrench, a key that came with your irrigation set, or a Phillips screwdriver in there, and you turn it just to the right, and that takes it down to more of a mist. You're going to want to have the mist being something better than this thin stream that actually keeps this pretty darn dry as I pass it under the stream. Because almost all of your water goes just to that tiny little area right between here and here. Everything else is bone dry, relying on redundancy, and when you have 10% coverage in a radius, it's impossible to have 100% coverage based on redundancy. Not doing this, not making these adjustments, is going to leave your lawn extremely susceptible to reinfestation, simply because you're going to have really wet right next to really dry, which is going to be a stronger lure than the repellent that I can ever put down. What happens in areas like this is that this area right at this bush becomes a really wet drip line right at this mulch, which is designed to hold water in, right there. However, right there, it gets almost no water. So this is going to be a very dry area right next to a very wet area. This is an area that moles absolutely love. A worm farm right next to a really dry area. Both of them are very attractive. They won't be able to resist it. My suggestion, once again, tune that thing down to more of a mist. Backyard is pretty much the same. Like you have a head here that is first of all set to way too much of a stream to cover this area, and secondly only hits that. backyard settings, say to there, or that head over here, and all of them. They're all set to too much of a stream, especially in hilly, dry areas where you have shade and beds, which can stay moist, right next to exposed hill, which can be extremely dry. When you have irrigation that's set to encourage dry pockets, you're really going to want to have the same thing back here and adjust these down so that you have, again, even coverage throughout its radius rather than most of the water just going to the end.